start, a lot of you have been on short-term missions, I think. So I'm just going to start about Brazil in general and maybe a little bit about my past experience there, because I was there for 6 months last year. So Brazil, do you want to use your map? Can you use your map?
Yes.
I realized, and I think a lot of people don't know much about Brazil in general. They know about the Amazon, and that's about it. So we have a world map.
Nice.
Thanks. Okay, so here's Brazil, this big green thing. And so you have different regions. You have, like, up in the north-ish is the Amazons. So that's, like, the rainforest. And that, you know, that's where you have the indigenous Brazilian Indians there. And then you have, like, up here is a region, the Nordeste, they call it, the northeast, kind of. And then you kind of have, like, over here you have, like, Rio and then São Paulo, which are, like, the bigger cities. And those are, like, cities. And then inland is more, like, country folk, kind of. And so São Paulo is right here, and we're going to be in the state of São Paulo. So we're going to be, like, right here, I guess. So, like, in the southern third or fourth and, like, inland. So we're, like, going to be in the country. And the big, it's interesting because in the big cities, there's a huge gap. You have, like, the really rich people that live in high-rises, and right across the freeway, you'll have the favelas, like, on the mountainside. And it's just, the socioeconomic gap in the cities is huge. Yeah, and then you have everything in between, too. And more in the country, smaller cities, like where I was, you still have diversity. Like, the house I was in was pretty nice. And, like, running water, electricity, internet. And right next door, there was, like, a shack built on dirt, just, like, broken down. And so that juxtaposition of wealthy and poor is not a foreign thing in Brazil, I guess. What else can I tell you about Brazil? The racial makeup of the Brazilian people, they have lighter skinned people from Europe. They have people of African descent that came over. They have people of Oriental descent. A lot of Japanese in São Paulo. And then everything mixed. Mestizo is the word they call for, like, kind of mixed, like, intergeneration, I guess, what we would maybe call, like, Kappa or something like that. So yeah, it's hard to, like, put a finger on what a Brazilian person looks like, because, I mean, Josh and Brittany kind of saw too. You could be really fair-skinned, you could be really dark-skinned. It's crazy. Okay, so my personal experience, I'm going to kind of talk about where I stayed in kind of, like, inland country, small city. And I'm going to talk about, like, my perceived purpose of my trip and then what my actual purpose was. Because I feel like, and we're going to kind of talk collectively about the purpose of short-term mission trips, like, abroad, and maybe open it up to discussion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my short-term missions trip. And so I was there for 6 months, and I didn't know anything about where I was going, but I pictured myself going to a really poor community, and I was going to do soccer clinics for, like, the kids on the streets and, like, really minister, because that's where my heart and my passion is to minister to the poor. So that's what I totally thought I was doing. And when I got there, I was staying in, like, in a middle upper class home, and the church was pretty well off. Like, no one was homeless. Everyone had a job. Everyone, I mean, according to the standards, they were pretty well off. And my soccer classes were mainly for the people in the church, and my English classes were mainly for the people in the church. So I was ministering to the people within the church, and there was no outreach that I was doing outside of the church. So I was really, really disappointed, and struggled a lot with like purpose and like, why the heck am I here? Because I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I was just taking up their resources. They were like feeding me and housing me, and I was just kind of not really doing anything in terms of like kingdom work. I felt like, but I think what I realized, and I saw God working, and it took me like 4 months to realize that I was ministering to the people within the church, mainly the leadership of the church, because they were going through a time of transition. Their pastor was leaving, and they really needed to be called out in that time to step up into a leadership role within the church. And so I believe God's purpose for me there during that time was to encourage the leadership of the church and challenge them to step up into leadership roles within the church, which is something I'm not very familiar with. Like, how am I going to, I'm not like a minister, pastor. I'm not very knowledgeable, but about like that Bible stuff. But I don't know. God used me in that way to build relationships with those people and kind of call them out and be able to challenge them in that way. And so my perceived purpose for the trip and how God actually used me was completely different. And actually, while I was there, it's funny because they thought I was unhappy because they knew I had a heart for the poor. So they thought I was unhappy doing the ministry that I was doing there. And so they actually tried to like create a ministry for me to go out into the community and start some sort of program with the kids in the streets. And I don't know, this was like halfway through my time, and they're like, you're unhappy, I can tell. And I was like, no, I'm not, I'm here to serve the church. And so they tried to create this thing for me to do. And I kind of realized that wasn't the vision of their church, and it wasn't going to be carried on after I left. So I kind of was like, no, I'm not going to do it, because one, you're not going to continue it, and two, that's not the vision of your church. And so to like put all these resources and this time into something that's not your vision, that's not going to be carried out, is going to be totally purposeless. And so I think that was the point where I just realized that I need to be serving in a way that's effective for this community and for this church in this time. So yeah, I think that bringing it back, it's like realizing that the way to approach a short-term mission especially is, I don't know, I believe working with the things that are in place there already instead of creating something. And then being flexible with like what you think you're going to do, and then allowing the Holy Spirit to move and work in the way He's going to work. Because like even going to Brazil now, we don't really know the needs in the areas. We're just going because they said they want us and there is a need, but we're not exactly sure how they want us, what they want us to do exactly. So we're just going with an open mind and open heart to help in any way that we can without our like perspective and opinion kind of like clouding the purpose, God's purpose, I guess. Was there anything else I wanted to say, Brittany?
Do you want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to do?
Okay, so we do know a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to Pompeii the first week, and we're going to be, they have like a super semana, which means super week. And it's like a VBS for the kids that they have every year. And we're going to be helping out with that, doing sports ministry, arts and crafts. We're going to be going to a women's prison one day. We're going to be going to a home for children at risk another day. And then hanging out with the youth at night, every night. And then the second week, we're going to Londrina, which is in another state. And kind of doing the same thing, like sports ministry and VBS. Yeah, just so, and then doing sports with kids at night, or teenagers at night. But other than that, we don't really know exactly what we're going to do, or how it's going to work out, or how big of a role they want us to play, or I don't know. I'm not sure. But that's the rough outline of what we're going to do. And so Brittany's going to talk about other things.
Did you want to show your video at all, or you want to do that at the end, or if we have time?
Oh yeah, I was going to show a video, huh?
Yeah.
Do you want to? I mean.